And welcome to Keyforge Premier League Weeklies Burn the Stockpile segment, where me and Dominic from Canada say hello,
Hey,
Dominic.
how's it going, guys?
Are going to talk about some art. And this week we have Fila, the researcher. This is one of Dom's choices. And as you can see, there's a lot to talk about here. But before
Just,
we get too far into it, let's first say that we wanted to thank everybody for last month's tournament. We had a whopping 89 people show up, so we decided that for December we were gonna do something similar. So we're doing it again. So for December, on the 5th, we are going to be running a charity event. Basically, it's what we did is we reached out to a bunch of different like teams and different people that have businesses and stuff, and we asked them to basically do a donation match, like a participation match. Basically, it's kind of like, how like you take your kids like at school and they come home and they're like, oh mom, pledge us a lap, per lap on a run or something like that. That's kind of where the idea, I think, structured from, and Z's done a great job so far. We're up to $9.30 per person that enters the event. So your $10, out of your $10, only 70 cents of it is unaccounted for at this point. That won't be going to the charity. And the charity that we picked is Doctors Without Borders. And this event will be taking place on the 5th of December 2020 at 11 a.m. Eastern. It's a $10 entry fee, with cash prizes up to the top eight and $75 Luxurious Play style gift card, and just lots of fun.
for the Doctors Without Borders charity, I think that it's always great to have things. I used to actually be the president of a, a charity in Nova Scotia in Canada there. And we raised funds for the IWK, which is the Children's Hospital of Nova Scotia. And we did something a little bit different, like you're doing here. And instead of just raising straight funds, because we're a board game community, we actually did board game tournaments, and we raised money to refill the IWK's board game library with new games. So when kids and families were there for a couple of weeks or however long they were there with their families, they would have board games to play, to have that, normal moments of their life while they're dealing with the issues in the hospital. So always nice to have charity events like that. As far as the event that you guys are running, I already talked to yourself and a few people saying that I try not to hit too many tournaments online, but if people want me to enter the event, I am a decent player of Keyforge, I think. But I'm more than willing to be spotted in the event if people want to put in the minimal amount, and if I somehow win the event, which I think is beyond small of a chance, but if I somehow win, whatever winnings would normally go to that spot, I would just give to the charity, of course.
That's amazing. And that is a reason to sponsor somebody to play even. There's so many ways that you can give into this event and basically help. We're still doing the same prize payout structure. Our goal this tournament is 100 people. That's like a big goal. We thought like last round, when I said 80 people would get my extra $50 credit in my store, like Z wasn't sure we would hit 80, and we hit 89. So this month, if we hit 100, I will gladly give another $50 up in my out of my store for that, and I will also give you $25 cash if you don't want to use the credit. So you can. It's a win-win no matter what you do. It's the same. I told Leo, because Leo's like, there's not really a lot I need, obviously, because he's a top-end player. So I was like, well, I could give you half of that in cash, and I figured that was the fair compromise. So there's that. There's also going to be a $75 luxurious playstyle um, coupon to use to purchase new stuff off of LP. So the Dark Ember Vault tokens were won by Jay Philippeg last go round. Those were a $55 MSRP. He's upped it to $75 credit. So that's another big plus, right, to the event. And that's, again, will be a free giveaway. And like I said, right now we're at a $9.30 match for every person that enters the event. So that's a pretty good stretch, right? Like that's going to be pretty sweet. So with that said, we don't want to harp on this all that much, but I wanted to at least put it out there and say thank you to everybody that's making this like real and making it real good. There's a lot of just awesome things like happening with the community in making the most out of this COVID crap situation, right? Because COVID numbers, at least in my area, are going back up. They're skyrocketing higher than they were back in when it first started. I think people got a little bit too complacent, and I get it. Like we're all stuck in quarantine, and so like we all want to get back to being social and being human, quote unquote, again. But we gotta let this pass until we get a cure. Like we gotta stop being stupid and like start doing the right things, because we're making these poor doctors and nurses like work so hard to help already, like to help the cause already. Like we don't need to give them more bodies. And I have a guy that's on the front line. He does a lot of the frontline COVID stuff, and he says it's scary how like numb he's becoming to like people just dying from COVID, like because there's so many bodies now. So like with that said, think about our event. And if you have any questions, you can contact Z, myself, or Carl. We'd be more than glad to walk you through that and stuff. Again, it is on the website, and that is the crazykillingmachine network.co.uk. It is an HTTPS colon backslash backslash www dot. So that's how you get there. But all that plugging. We'll get to what our show is really about. Let's talk about some Fila, the researcher. So Dom, take it away. You picked it, so you tell me why you picked it, and tell me a little bit about this artist that painted it.
100%. So, getting right into it. So, one of the reasons why I picked Fila the researcher was that, well, we're starting to get low on numbers. If you're new and just turning in, and this is your first video, thanks. Like, subscribe, tell us what you think of the art that we're covering, and all those good things, of course. But one of the reasons I picked it was that we haven't done a logos art card, and right now we're trying to cover each one of the houses for our first couple of videos, and it's been going great so far. All of the people have been some good interaction with some of the fans of the videos, and the artists themselves have really messaged us. And so far, we've had two artists that said that they would like to come on the show, and is when they have some free time and talk about some of their other cards. So I think that's going to be great. That's all segueing back into this one. So I picked Fila, the researcher, talking to Jupiter about it because there is a lot going on, as Jupiter mentioned, as you can see. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to see if there's anything hidden. I think there might be, or maybe there's not, within this piece of art. And this artist is Gabriella. And I'm not going to try to pronounce the last
Marchiro.
name.
Marchiro.
Marchiro. This artist is from Brazil. We've already covered one Brazilian artist, so I guess what one of the interesting things about Keyforge is that there's artists all over the world, and if you want to see more artists and more of where the art is coming from, we strongly encourage you to check out Archon Arcana, which we get a lot of our information from, because it talks about all the artists. So this artist has done only 6 cards have been credited to the artist so far. So 3 logos cards and 3 Sanctum cards. But again, this one was specifically picked because I love logos. We needed to cover logos, and there's a bunch of little artifacts and gems within it that I think are going to be interesting to go more in depth and see what we can find. And when we saw the picture, there was actually a little bit of a bonus item that we'll be covering a little bit later on. So that's just a little bit of the start. So I'll let Jupiter do his deep dive as he always does, or do his intro of what he thinks of the card.
Well, I think that this card is interesting, right? Basically, Philia, like or Fila, or however you want to pronounce it, I'm not sure, but is I found is actually the plural of the word phylum, which the definition of that is like any thread-like part, like a filament, right? And so here we have Phila, the researcher, and like going into the idea and the concept of Keyforge, I guess it kind of makes sense that they would use a name like that because the idea in Keyforge is discovery, right? And I think she embodies the element of Keyforge's discovery like super awesome, like perfect kind of correlation to that. So with that said, I find that there is a whole lot going on in this thing, and I could have like some of it is stretched because I think some of the background things are kind of left a little bit like less detailed than some of the things, but like at the same time, like there's a lot of cool um concepts that we could get into here, right? And like we can look at, and the color palette is definitely very logos to me. The blue is very elevated by the yellows and the purples, and like it's very obvious that it fits, right? She has like the cybernetic arm and like everything else. You can see there's a lot of robot to her as far as that goes. And I'm at the point now where I think a lot of these logos people, like even though they have human faces and things like that, I think they're mostly robot. Like I think that it's like almost like a fake skin pulled over their head at this point because there's just too much mechanical going on here, right? Like, but
Mm.
I won't kill everything, but that's my general consensus. I'll come back on the art piece after you do your bit because I don't want to overstep and not take away all your thunder because there's a lot of thunder in this piece, I guess.
Hey, yeah, for sure. No, I would I agree and I disagree at the same time. For as far as logos goes, I think that she is still human overall. I think that they avoid trying to say like cyborg in this case. Again, this is coming back to the card game, but I think a lot of the humans. Within logos are augmented to an extent that is greater than what we're used to seeing in like our own real world, which doesn't make as much sense. But like in the typical fantasy that we think of, like okay, how human do you have to still be a human versus a cyborg versus being a robot? And Keyforge does have all three. In this case, I still think that she is a human. I think she is closer to being a cyborg, like you're saying. But I would still say that she's a human in this case. And it's interesting you mentioned the color palettes and whatnot. It goes hand in hand with the logos. With any logos card, again, we've talked about in our other videos that a lot of the colors match very directly with whatever house that they're being represented. And there is quite a few blues, as you mentioned. And it's interesting that. I don't think there is an over amount of blue. I don't think that. Yeah, I'm not sure how the artist does it because I'm not an artist myself. But the artist was able to use all the blues that you see, and still there's lots of contrast. There's still everything is easy to be seen, and I'm not distracted from it. And we'll get to the card a little bit later on, but the focal point to me is still Fila, the researcher, and all her knickknacks that she has. But I'm still focused on her a little bit more. But it's interesting how the artist was able to do this without me being distracted by what looks like waves of blues, like when I'm looking more deep into it. As far as the artifacts, though, that is one of the big things that we're looking at here. Is that I did spend about half an hour or so because I always procrastinate. So about half an hour before we were started talking about this, trying to figure out what all this might be. And interesting enough, after looking at all the cards, I have some theories on some of the items, but I actually think that a lot of these artifacts and items aren't in any cards, and I'll be curious to see what Jupiter thinks here in a second. But I actually don't think that there's any of these artifacts or items or from any of the cards or any information that we have in the game. But I do have some theory about a few of them about what house they would belong to or what ancient group it might be. Um, so what do you think about that, Jupiter? Do you think that I'm wrong with that, and there is items that correlate directly with cards, or
Hmm. I was looking at stuff too, like as you know, and I think that like some of the ones that stick out to me are like I don't know if they're specifically quote unquote like the thing in the card art or not, but like they're like you said, they definitely at least identify somewhere, right? I think one of the biggest ones that stuck out to me immediately were the goggles with the ears. Like it looks like the top part of the head of like a goblin almost, like the way it has like the side pieces on the goggles and the hair and all that. That like made me think of old Boomy.
Hmm.
And like like the goblins and stuff of the group. I know Rapskull doesn't have goggles and stuff, but I know that old Boomy had goggles. I'm like actually digging into it right now because I forgot to look for that one. But I'm assuming that out of all the ones, like for some reason, like yeah, even like on like Grenade Snib, like they have that style of goggle, but it's more red. So I would say no, not a direct correlation there. I don't know why I'm old school. I guess I'm just too old to actually use the find mechanism, and I always have to scroll. Oh wait, what was
Hey,
that?
that's too fine. I can talk a bit while you're looking for that. Is that yeah? I can totally see. So I looked up old Boomy just now, and I can see that resemblance that you're talking about of that being potentially a goblin, and I would concur with that being an option. And I thought initially the mask to the left, the almost like bunny looking mask with the diamond in the center. I thought initially, I looked through. I was like, I swear I've seen this mask face. So I searched and I searched, and I thought it's very dis looking initially to me. I think I'm now incorrect in that thought process after searching, but it does have some symmetry in the way the mass is formed. It does look similar to some disc faces because a lot of the disc faces are masked, and that's why I bring it up. But at the same time, it's almost I don't want to say too colorful, but it doesn't. There's not enough like darkness, I guess. There's not enough dis aspect to it. So I think that maybe I'm incorrect with that one. And the one to the right of the goblin looking mask, I have no idea what that would be. I looked and I was like, I'm just not sure for that one.
I kind of wonder if the one to the right is going to be like a future mask, like something we find in the future, kind of like an Easter egg, kind of like the Saurian skulls and the pile of skulls kind of thing, because that mask is very not congruent to anything. So what if it's like a Dark Tithings thing? Like what if it's like a mask from like one of the Aquans, or if it's a mask that maybe we should see if the Airborne ever come out, etc. As far as the mask on the left, that little like the bunny looking one, I am surprised you looked in House D's for that. I would think that Untamed would be a stronger thought for that style, like the way that looks. But yeah, I'm not sure. Like you could also say too, like to me, I think that like the horn could is obviously something that could be Brobnar, like, but not necessarily like it doesn't match the battle horns that you see that you see in the Brobnar art and stuff. I looked that up. I couldn't really find that and stuff like that. The little spider thing next to it, I mean, that could be like a Tolus or like some kind of imp creature, but in reality it could just be like some weird mite. Like there's not. It's like the vagueness of all the stuff, it has like a similarity that makes you think about stuff in the Nexus, but I don't think any of it is really overly confident to me, like to where I feel like I'm going, yeah, that's exactly what that is. That has to be that. Like, I kind
Yeah, and I
of.
actually kind of like that. In
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was like, I was passing to you. We got a little bit of a static bump.
Oh, no worries. It is that I kind of like the aspect that, and that's where I'm curious what our viewers think of this. Let us know what you think is in the top shelf, middle shelf, and so forth. Because I think that this is one of the wonders of KeyForge is just theorizing what these artifacts might actually be. I think the ones that stand out the most to me is the horn in the orbs. To me, stand out as things that would fit into houses. The horn, I do think, is Brobner, just because I can't picture any other house really, besides
Untamed.
maybe Untamed.
Yeah.
Um, that would use horns, and it's just because we've seen I think two cards have sound the horn, obviously being the biggest one, and I think there's one other card that shows someone sounding a horn, an alarm of sorts. So that's why I consider it potentially Brobnar. But at the same time, it doesn't have Brobnar aspects, because if it was Brobnar, we normally would associate that with having red coloring in it, as well with it being imbued with like amber and whatnot. So it's nice that there's vagueness, but also resembles potentially stuff. But at last, the last thing that might be is that a lot of these artifacts, they don't need to be in a specific house. It could be from houses that old houses that no longer exist on the Crucible, or rare artifacts that were found from years ago, right? So lots of options.
Hmm. And when you look at her face, like in the way she's like looking at this orb and stuff like that, she's definitely pondering it, right? Like it's not something that is she knows what this is or anything, and there's like a bit of curiosity to it. So it makes sense that like the gizmos and the knickknacks that we see here in front of her are things that are unknown at this point, because at the point that she was released, because we don't really know what she's like. You don't research things usually, right? Like it's not as baffling to you. And here she's obviously kind of like zooming in, trying to figure things out, looking at it deeply, not quite understanding fully what this little like robot thing is. Like it could be like like an antique version of a bat drone, like old school, like like old Archimedes, from old Clash of the Titans to new Archimedes and then new Clash of the Titans. But who knows? Like but
A
go
hundred
ahead.
percent, yeah.
Like I just don't know. Like there's a lot going on, right? But like back on like some of the art aspects of it though, right? Of this piece. Again, we have the, like you were talking about the color palette earlier, and I was I waited to respond to it because I didn't want to get sidetracked off the things. But the color palette here is pretty amazing because she uses tonal blues, right? This is basically what I would almost consider this monochromatic, other than that the purple is too purple. But like and what she did is she used a lot of white and then light colors to accent the things that she wanted to pull forward, and then she pushed a lot of things backwards with the darkness and the darker blues and stuff like that. So she did a really wonderful job, like you said, of using a lot of blue because it's very much a logos card, but she also did a very good job of making sure the color play was right. And she took a lot of things that would normally people would look at and they would paint flat. Like a good example is the center of the sun behind her, like the sun shape. Like you see, like most of it is like this one color blue, right? But then there's like a light aspect to it where the white comes in and intersects like into that mild blue to make the rim of the sun, like the inner circle, basically look darker because of that little bit of white she added instead of just pushing that blue to it. And you see that in the back of Fila's head in that same circle, she used a little accent of white to basically pull the white through and make your eye follow it, right? And she does that throughout this whole piece, but that's like a very obvious example of what I'm trying to explain there. But she does that like in all the pieces. You don't see anything really other than the things that are not important being flat color. And an example of that is even the book like that she has open in front of her. The actual binding of the book is darker than the cover of the book, and that's all the little bit of detail she really needed to kind of get there. But she also took a dark border to the edge of the book to make it give that outline, right? So lots of really cool artistic techniques and like simplicity in making complexity. So this is a pretty fun and awesome looking piece of art.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the note that you mentioned about the book having that the little bit of darkness to give it, as you mentioned there, so that it pops out a little bit more. Because I didn't even see that at first. I was like, oh, you know what? I see that now. And some of the other interesting aspects, like that were being mentioned. So one of the things, and again, this is vagueness. So just pointing out items that I see. I wonder what people think, and I wonder what you think, Jupiter, for the two orbs. And I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but I see similarities. I don't know if I would consider them the orbs from those houses, but I see similarities for the orb that is on the second shelf there. For some reason, I think of Orb of Invidious, and then the orb that is in that container, I think of Orb of Wonder. And the Orb of Wonder one, I'm pretty sure, is way out to lunch. And then the Orb of Invidious, I think, is not the Orb of Invidious, but it's a similar artifact, if that makes sense. Almost like if I'm thinking of like Lord of the Rings and like the different rings, like it seems like it was made during the same era. And I'm wondering if like the orb of Invidious, there was another orb that was given to a different race at the same time, because I have that same feeling. And then above it, uh, it just looks like a chest to me, but I was thinking of like the war chest from like Brobnar. So I'm wondering what you think of those three items there, or if anything pops out with those ones.
Well, I think that the idea of art is important, right? And like the idea is like what do you take from it, right? And so she did what she did is she did a good job of making it ambiguous enough. She made it a good job of making it ambiguous enough that like you were able to write these things in and make them, because none of them like are spot on replications of anything in the art, right? Like I have not seen anything. And I've been scrolling this whole time, like just to make sure, but like I haven't seen anything that is even remotely close to anything of this. But I've seen things that are similar, right? And so like when you do look at things like that horn, you go, man, is that the horn that Choda had on his hip, or is that like the the horn that um, sound the horns horn? Is that like one of those kind of horns? Like, what is it? Like, where does it fit? But when you look at the art, you go, man, that's not even close. What was I thinking? But the artist here is capturing that inspiration, right? It's capturing the things that you care about. Like, it's not a far fetch to think that maybe like one of those orbs in the box there, like the one you're talking about, like you're like not sure. It's like, what if that's an Eye of Judgment? Like, it just not activated, right? Because Eye of Judgment is like this big ball that has a bunch of lights that come out of it, right? That's up on a pillar somewhere. So maybe it's an Eye of Judgment. Who knows? But like, the cool thing is like because of the lack of perspective or the over definition of anything in the in the set, like even like you said, the orb of wonder, it could be an orb of wonder. When it lights up, it probably would look kind of like the orb of wonder, right? Like there like could be lights coming out of those little holes and stuff like that. Not too far fetched, right? Like and who knows, like and it's like in an interesting container too. So does the container tell us where it came from? Who knows? Like and these are all things that again she's sparking our curiosity and giving us the ability to write our story, right? Like the coolest thing about this since we started doing this for me is we're kind of starting to define how we see the Crucible, right? Like you and I, and like we're basically bouncing ideas off each other. But every time we get done with one of these episodes, I feel like I'm more of a part of the Crucible, right? Like I feel like I'm there now. Like I'm starting to kind of picture what it would be and where it is. It feels like familiar, It's not like I'm just driving through the Crucible now when I play the game anymore. I'm like, oh yeah, this right here. I bet you this is what's happening. Like now there's stories that start to come from the game, and that makes the game 100% more enjoyable. So, anything you take from any of the art in the game is a bonus for you. So learn to enjoy the artwork and enjoy these things, and I think the game will go to a whole nother level for you. So that's how I feel
A
about
hun-
it.
100%, yeah, and that's where I'll plug back in. Is that one of the things that we would love to see more is more interaction with the community, and I think this is a great piece of art to have exactly that. So I think that I might post this on the Facebook group as well, and plug in, of course, our videos for new viewers that haven't seen it, and see what people think, if there's anything hidden, or if there's any meaning to people, and we might talk about it in a later cast as well, saying that hey, this is what people saw that we didn't initially think about, and having that interaction and building that community and enjoying the art of Keyforge is key. Segueing here though, one of the things that we always like to do, and this one has a great piece. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to cover for the main picture there, Jupiter.
I just would bring out attention to the details, like the small details in the thing that make it even more interesting. Like if you look at her Oculus, like it's not just an Oculus, right? It's like it almost looks like a microscope, a futuristic microscope, in the way that they're basically using multiple lenses to get a bigger view of it and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the rest of my stuff is probably going to go well with what you want to talk about next, because I know where you're going, and I will. I guess I'll point it out now, and then you can go on your rant. But if you look at her face, right, her face is very young, right, and this is another thing that makes me wonder, like, if it's not just a skin mask, because her face is very young and stuff. But like, you also look at her face, and there's moles like all over it, like aging moles, like like old people get those spots, like the dark spots from the like too much sun over the course of their life and stuff like that. She has them like all around her eyes and like on her forehead and under, in that spots and stuff like that where there's actually lighted area. So that shows that she's quote unquote not as young as you might think she is, right? But segueing into Dominic's piece, I'll let you take it over from that. But
Hey, okay, a little bit thunder. So if Jupiter scrolls down here, and I'm not looking at the
I
screen, so I'm
yeah,
sure he's
I just
scrolled
scroll.
down. What we're talking about is boom. You see these four beautiful concept pieces of art, and then you see what the artist initially, or this is what I assume the artist initially said. Hey, this is what um, Fila is going to look like. And the contrast is it's interesting, and this is where Jupiter's saying that he thinks it's a skin graph. I just think they chose a different design, but she looks much older and a little bit more like just a. When I look at this, and let us know what you think, I actually kind of wish that they chose to have gone with. This version of Fila, only because I like the concept that she's a researcher and she's not a young researcher. Not that the final one she's young in any means, but she is more youthful looking in the final image. And this one, she is a little bit older looking. And again, who knows how old a lot of the humans are in logos, because since they're augmented, they could be thousands of years old. Almost reminds me of, I think it's like Futurama in the heads in the jars. So like with all the presidents and whatnot, to segue into that for a second. But yeah, she is a little bit older, but a lot of it is kept uh, and so a lot of the things are very similar from the young and the older looking images. So you can tell that she was always going to be a cyborg version of a human. Hard to say how much human is left of her. I think the main thing, as long as you have like the heart, the brain, those are usually the main components that will still allow you to be human, though it's usually a little bit more cyborg. That's getting way off into a tangent, so I'll stop with that one. The main thing that we want to talk about, though, is these four images on the left. And it's always interesting in the concept arts. I love seeing this, and well, we'll have to reach out to artists and potentially FFG if they'll allow us to see more of these concept arts, because I'm a huge fan of seeing what potentially the art could have gone, and which art they chose as the final design. So with that said, I've already rambled on for a bit here. I'm going to pass it over to Jupiter with this. I'm going to say, what do you think of the concept art that they chose to go with versus the other three? Do you think they chose the best one, or do you think that there was another one that you would have liked to have seen?
I on this one, I don't really particularly think that any of them would have failed. I think they all have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. I do like the fact that, like, since we are talking about Fila, that the one they chose has the circular background to it, and like it basically pops her in this like aura of like goodness. Like it kind of makes you feel like she's a good person. Like she's not like the evil scientist, because she has this like radiant light behind her, and they made it look like a sun for a reason, probably. That would be my guess. But the other ones are a little bit dark and more dab, more scientist, like in the lab kind of science work looking things. But I think all of them could have worked. But I think maybe the reason they chose three is because of, like I said, like I think it highlights her better as a character, right? Like it basically makes her the forefront, like you said. And the other ones, like, yeah, she's still in the center of the piece, but there's not as much defining. Like the gizmos could have took over the busyness of those. So they're all good, like they're all really neat. But I think that they made the right choice again with the way that they decided to accent Fila as the centerpiece, instead of like letting the lab take over, or having just an awkward like square door behind her. Like I don't like that one as much as I like the circle. I think they're both good. But and notice too that in concept art number 3, there's a square, so that square door is basically like, if you were looking from that square door, it looks like that's the perspective, versus the where on this other side it would be looking from where the window was. So and that is not well defined in the actual the finished piece. Like she could have definitely probably use that there, but I think she just decided to go with like the radiance from the window, like the sun coming through the window, to be the main source of light and not have a conflicting light. But the two lights conflicting with each other could have made for some interesting depth as well. But I think the simplicity of how she chose to do it, and like the using the like I said, like the really matted down colors next to each other to form the depth and stuff without like tons of detail. I think that actually just worked well. So I'm not gonna it's different styles of art at this point, and they're all good. They would all be good, but the one that she chose is definitely not a mistake. It's amazing. Like it looks really good to me. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. So for me, what I want to talk about here is that I think that 1 and 4 and 2 and 3, you have similarities, and I think it's basically that. So going with 1 and 4, so she's sitting down, she's taking notes. These ones feel like they are all four of them feel like it's in her research lab, but 1 and 4 feels like, hey, she's sitting down, she's reviewing this globe. And so she's reviewing the same artifact in 1 and 4 and the same artifact in 2 and 3. And I think one would have been potentially interesting to see because where she's using that magnifying glass, it might have shown a little bit more of the zoom in details of what the artifact was. But I think they took some of that concept. I think the artist here, she took some of the concept and she actually said, hey, why don't I ingrain that? And as you're saying for like the Oculus, she has that magnifying capacity, so showing that logo science. And so it was kind of cool that that got integrated into the final piece of art. Another item that I wanted to note is that I think we were hit the spot mark with saying that none of the artifacts represent any of the houses, because if you look in the background, we covered other concept art, and the main focus in all four of these pictures is herself and her desk, but all the knickknacks are just kind of faded in the background. And when we looked at other concept arts, the concept arts were key in showing items that are going to be important for the final picture. So that's why I think that's interesting. So in this case, the main focus is her desk with some knickknacks, mostly herself. And then you can see that there's one main artifact in focus. So the globe or the orb, the larger orb in the 1 and 4, and then the smaller one that she's reviewing in 2 and 3. I also like the fact that 3, when it was chosen, it's the only one where she is fully standing up in. Though it's interesting that I didn't notice it at first when reviewing the card. There's no chair in the concept art, but they did show a little bit of the chair, just showing that she's normally sitting down. But hey, she's looking at this artifact. It gives it a little bit more of an action piece, that she's so puzzled by this interesting piece that she's standing up and she's contemplating. We're not sure what she's contemplating, but she's thinking about something more in depth there. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting aspects for the concept pieces. I don't know if there's anything else that you saw with the concept there, Jupiter.
no, you hit most of it on the head, and I think it's nice to hear that you mentioned the fact that her standing up is important, because it is, because again, it's causing a different dynamic, right? With the one in picture 4, it's a very like XY axis kind of piece of art, which I'm not a fan of like those kind of arts. I always like to tilt or like some kind of action angle. The same kind of goes like with the way that she's like very upright in number 2, like she's very stiff, like in a straight line on the Y axis, like going up and down. But there is more movement around her, like they got the circular flow going around her, so that one would have worked just fine, I think, in appeasing my motion goals. One is just very flat, like as for it's very much like you said, it's like very much flat, like down to earth, like straight into business, right? Like that one I think is the most what's the word I'm looking for? The most common idea we would have of somebody doing research, right? Like so therefore like maybe a little bit too dull for the likings of the card. But then when you look at number 3, you have that XY axis, but instead of it being XY, the X is like very much on a 45-degree tilt, and then with the Y axis coming out, the arc in her back to give the extra like movement in like pull back is makes it just a little bit more interesting to me. And again, the fact that she's standing up is dynamic much more than sitting down. Sitting down is kind of like makes you feel stagnant, whereas with her standing up, it's like she's really into it. Like the energy, like you mentioned, is definitely there. And then we go back to the actual picture, the original picture, and you see that that lean back is very much a part of it. Like pulling it away from that XY axis. You see that instead of using a straight edge on the table, there's a like a S curve. So again, breaking up that the monotony of that plane, and like you notice that every single one of the shelves has a curve as well, because she did a very good job of disguising like the way the desk would be and giving you this like encompassing perspective. And again, it's all pulling to her, like to that center of that sun, right? Like that's kind of like where you get pulled in, and then there she is popping out of it, right? So and the fact that she stands in this light in the sunlight so much, maybe that's why she has sunspots on her face. Maybe it's like that point of she's been there for many years, and like the sun and the melanin is catching up to her. I don't know, but yeah, all around
Or
amazing piece. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, or she's a ginger. She's a true human.
She has like all robot pieces going into her head from her neck. Like I have a hard time believing there's much human left in this.
I know. This is where we disagree. I think this is a good time to start talking about the actual card in the game. Then.
Right, so this is where we do our segment where we basically say, close or not close. Like how much does this art encompass the idea? So who normally goes first? The person that picked it or the other person? I don't remember.
I can't know. In this case, I'll cover it, and then you can say your view on this one. So, if Jupiter hasn't already brought up the card, he's going to bring that up here momentarily. Again, I just can't see his.
Now you're asking for me to do work. Kidding.
So he'll bring up the card, which he probably already did, and it's just teasing me with it. So Fila, the researcher, the card is a 1 power logos card. Doesn't have any armor, and it's a human and a scientist, which is clearly shown in the art itself. So just 1 power, elusive, and it says after a creature is played adjacent to Fila, the researcher, draw a card. So this one, I went back and forth and I thought about it in my head for a bit. I'll give my score at the end, but I think as far as being the traits, human and scientist, bang on. I think that Jupiter would say full-on robot, potentially cyborg instead of human, where I'm happy with it being a human. I might have added cyborg and scientist, but they tried to limit the traits down to 1, 2, 3 for those who play the card game. So I can understand why they just said human and scientist, but I could see cyborg being put in there. As far as the card matching the art, the main focus here is after a creature is played adjacent to Fila, the researcher, draw a card. And I'm going to say that there is a huge aspect to the art that is showing that makes sense to me. That basically someone comes to Fila, the researcher, because someone says, "Hey, I brought you this artifact. I just got into a big fight with a Brobnar creature. Do you know what this horn's about? And can you tell us more about it?" So she identifies rare artifacts. So almost like in an RPG game, she's the person that, as a researcher, she's identifying the characteristics so that maybe they can use that against their enemies or use it to their advantage. But she doesn't care about that. She just wants to do the research. So the drawing a card aspect, pulling from it, I see as once someone goes to talk to her, they gain that knowledge, and with that knowledge, they're able to dig deeper and get closer to their victory. So that's where I see it. That's my story that I give for it. Overall, though, I do think that the elusive part doesn't correlate as much. I can see how someone could say it does, but I don't see it as myself because I think that she's in her research lab. I don't think it's like a well hidden aspect. I think she's just in her city. So overall, as much as I enjoy that one aspect, I give it a 7 out of 10 myself because it doesn't directly correlate. I have to pull a little bit more, but I'm curious what you think, Jupiter. That's my impression of it.
Yeah, I'm on par with most of what you said. Like I think it's about 5 for me. Like it's like kind of in the middle because like elusive, not very elusive unless you're talking about like you can't get into her lab because she locks the door. But I guess that's one take on it that gives me like, but like it could go either way. It's like a coin flip. And then the after a creature is played adjacent to Fila, the researcher draw a card. I do get the idea that like, well, if a creature comes within her scope or whatever, that maybe she's willing to give information. And she's like we said before, the word Fila is plural for phylum, which is a thread or like basically a filament, right? So the idea is that she's connecting points and stuff like that. But and the idea that you get a card for a creature on both sides of her if they both happen, and she kind of brings them together, and the idea of knowledge somehow is a stretch. But I I don't know, like this just doesn't scream to me like if you read me this card and said what does the art look like, this isn't probably what I would think of. But when I saw it, I wouldn't disagree with it either. So I give it a straight five. Like I'm in the middle on whether like I mean we've seen some pretty good like real hardcore like yeah that definitely is fitting what it fits, and I don't feel that this one brings me that feeling. But I do like the artwork, but I don't think it necessarily overly fits with the card. And it definitely makes like with her one power too. I would expect her to be a bit like on the older side, like Fila that we were talking about, because like it would seem more frail, right? Like more fragile. But um, yeah, I guess that's where I'm at with that. I'm not blown away by the card matching the art, but I do love the art.
And that's fair. So I guess one of the last items to cover is now, again, getting back to the community aspect, let us know how much you think it covers the art matching the card. But one of the last things that we like to cover usually is that we compare the card in the game versus the overall art. And I think in this case, just give me 1 second. I have to reset my thing here, but here we go. I think in this case, there's not too much that you're missing because the main focus point is on Fila herself. Now there is items that are cropped out of the image, like the war chest that I was referring to earlier. That's
Hmm.
not seen in the card because it's covered by the logos symbol, as well as that at the bottom here, it just covers a little bit more of the books in general, and it's a little bit harder to see that there's a chair there. I didn't realize that there was a chair. I didn't even notice. I thought that was just something attached to her hip. But that's the beauty of seeing the full art because you get to see these honed in details. And that the other item that is fully covered up, but I don't think is important for this piece of art, because we already get the most of it, is that the scrolls in the top left hand corner. I don't think it's an important part of the art. It just helps with the art overall. So I think that the items that were cropped out because of what they have to fit onto the card itself is fine in this case, but nothing too revealing. But yeah, that's my thought process of what didn't make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think the full art form of this one is better than the cropped form. But that's because, like I said, there's just more here and stuff like it, to go with.
Hmm.
And again, this is an AOA card. It came out in AOA, right? So like, again, I'm starting to see that like Coda and AOA art seems to be more full when we see full pieces, versus like when once they hit worlds collide and mass mutations, it seems like the artists now have their concept of where their window is, like what they're trying to put their work into, and there's more focus on it, whereas this is more balanced across the whole piece, and then cropped to fit what they wanted, right? So I think bang for buck, 2019 is the copyright on this one, so that means that it's in that earlier school of art where they're still trying to figure out how they're going to place the art on the card and stuff. So therefore, you get actually a full artistic piece, and then they scope it to fit what they want. So, um, yeah, that's Fila.
Yeah, I think we covered everything for Fila, the researcher. Let us know if you'd like us to cover more art from this artist. What art you would like to see covered on basically from us, because we're willing to cover anything. And what you think of our episodes so far? I think we're are we on 6 episodes deep with like one that didn't make it so far? Is that correct?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean we're moving along, we're doing our thing, we're going back and forth, so it's fun. We've done
Yeah.
what?
So
We've done burn the stockpiles. We've done Kilophesian ideal. We've done Fila. We've done what's
Picaroon.
Picaroon.
Bad Penny, Rad Penny.
Yeah, and then there's one more. Which one are we forgetting?
There was Low Down, but that one didn't make
That
it.
yeah, that one didn't make it. So that's seven.
And then the one that you're forgetting is we did a Sanctum one as well.
Oh yeah, Numquad the fair. We did that one.
Hmm.
So that's eight that we've done. But like you didn't see Lowdown because that was our first run or practice one, and it didn't come out so great. So maybe if we get to people liking our stuff, if we can average, let's say 20 likes per episode, then we will we will give you guys a retro. We'll go back to it and discuss the fun of Lowdown, and that was a good piece too. Like I liked it. Like it was actually very different from what we've been looking at. So um, if not, then maybe we'll use it on a 20th episode or something. I don't know, but we'll see. we'll
Oh,
give you the
100%. Yeah.
we'll give you the lowdown when we know what we feels about it.
Straight cheese, and that's when you know it's time to go.
I don't know what you're talking about. Mhm. But anyway, so this is Jupiter from Malleus, New York, and thank you again for tuning into another Burn the Stockpile piece with me and Dominic. As always, we appreciate you guys, and this is a fun take for us on Keyforge. It's a different take. Nobody else has done it before, and now people are starting to touch into it. I saw Leo was interviewing artists and talking about the washovers and stuff. So it was in Italian. I don't know what they said, but I saw he was doing an art piece. So the influence is spreading. This is great, and we love all our Italian listeners, by the way, too. Leo's a great guy. I work with him all the time. So, um, yeah, that's all I got. What do you got, Dominic? Say your goodbyes, and we're out.
No, I don't have too much. Today's Remembrance Day, so for those, I hope you had a good Remembrance Day. It was a pretty humble here locally. It Not everyone could be out and about because normally I would be on parade myself. But hey. Doing these pieces of art and remembering those who have come before us is just keeping us sane. Is keeping us making sure that we know where we came from.
Absolutely. So with that said, we are out, and we will see you soon, as in next week.
Yeah. Take care.